Welcome to podcast number 6 of The Heart of the Shaman. And today we are discussing empowerment through the divine feminine. I'm Pavan and I'm here with my co host, Betty Gallagher.
Good
Um,
morning.
yes, I recognize if you say hi or you say something, then when people are watching it, it pops over to you. But if you don't say anything, then it just stays over me.
I wondered how that worked. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were discussing the topic a little bit before we hopped on here, and we're very excited about it. I would say, you know, it just feels like I don't quite want to say urgency, but it does feel that way about the energy of the divine feminine coming forward and also coming through in our experience in a more balanced way right now. So, first, I'm going to start with what the divine feminine is, or at least what that means to me and how that's tied into a shamanic perspective. And then, Betty, I know that you have your perspective on this as well. So, God, the creator, goddess, whatever spirit, however you choose to call this energy, has a masculine and feminine qualities. And there's a lot around separation in our world and experience, but this isn't really about highlighting the separation, although we will end up going into that just by virtue of explaining it. But the divine feminine is essentially these feminine qualities of creation and creator. And then we all have that God energy or creator energy. I'll use creator to stick with that to be more clear within us. So historically, the divine feminine has really been diminished, and we'll touch on that as well. But some of the really important aspects are the right brain emphasis and intuitive emphasis, and also having I'm going to say a bird's eye view on things. I feel like a masculine view is more focused on one thing. Um, and when I say that, it isn't about one being better or less, certainly, but there really is a value to both perspectives and being able to be in a fluid space around what energy, perspective, is going to come through in any given moment, if that makes sense. So, the intuitive piece is something that I'm going to dive into in a little while in a deeper way because I feel like that is a tool that we can strengthen and is really important and timely. Betty, do you want to touch on any other facet of what the defined feminine is?
I just think that the fact that the earth is our mother,
Yes.
the creation and birthed everything on the planet, and it represents so much power. When you think that a planet is a living being, just like us, or like an animal or a plant or whatever, the planet itself is a living being, and it is where creation starts. So like being female or saying Mother Earth, it's because of the fact that everything comes from her, and that's the original feminine divine, I think,
Yes.
creation. And the things that have been like a woman can create a meal from food that grows in the ground. You take it off trees and out of the ground, and you can eat that like it is, but women create something from it. They create a meal. I think it's just the power of creation. I feel like that's kind of the emphasis of the feminine, the divine feminine, more fair, more just, more nurturing.
Yes.
Not that men cannot do that, because balanced men, enlightened men who have that divine feminine in balance can be just as loving and nurturing and caring for their children and create meals and do all of that, what women can do. So it's balance, about, I think with men and women, it would have to be a few special people, that recognize that. but I think that mostly it's about creating a home and creating a nest like animals. The female creates a nest. We talked about that this morning. Um, just, acknowledging the fact that it takes balance. We're all created with sacred divine. We're all sacred when we come here, but it has to be in balance. It has to be, the women have to have the divine masculine and the men have to have the divine feminine. So it's balance, like yin and yang. It has to be both. When there's too much of either, it's been tragically out of balance, and Western civilization's been in crisis for a long time because of it, because of that imbalance. So I think that what we're trying to share here is how to find ways to bring it back into balance and to make people aware that it's something we need to recognize.
Yes. Thank you for that, because that feels like a much more distilled, all-encompassing definition also to say this is the power of creation. And we were discussing this earlier, how that is something that men historically have been afraid of. And this, we could really make this a whole nother segment, but certainly it warrants mentioning, and this has been for thousands upon thousands of years. And part of it is just, okay, if you're a male or if you're in the masculine, it may be, oh, I can't do that, or I don't have access to that. I don't understand it. And the most literal example, creating a child. I can't do it. I'm afraid of that power or that ability or what other things it translates to and what that looks like. And so this fear really created divisiveness and separation, and like the loss of lives of women being killed and even violently abused or tortured over the years. And it's still something we see today, depending on what culture or society that you're looking at. The other thing that's also true is there are societies that are more in the feminine energy, more matriarchal, and we see what that looks like as well. So it really points to, again, that balance being critical. And I think that certain things are in our DNA. And so this goes into how we're programmed. But that fear, and then women also have fear, because when we're wanting to express the full embodiment of who we are, there can be a fear that's not even at a conscious level, based on thousands of years of how that has been punished or snuffed out.
Mhm.
And you were talking about, you're a hippie and living through the time, certainly, of seeing how this played out more recently, not thousands of years ago, but I mean, certainly it plays out today as well. But
Right.
this points to it being really important to create a balance.
Well, there's too much competition. There
Yes.
should be unification and cooperation and all the things of two people with different genders working together for the same goals instead of competition and, feeling like one is better than the other because of their pay grade or whatever, and there's women that did brilliant things in science, and, they were recognized to some degree, but even launching rockets, the women that were doing the physics and working out the formulas and everything, those would never have gotten off the ground if they didn't have those people with those minds, women with those
Right.
minds. But the fear is the mystical part of it, and that's the shamanistic piece. The,
Yes.
the mystical, magical things that women did with herbs and rituals and the shamanic piece when they healed their children, or they um, were doing things that seemed magic or mystical. Anything you can't figure out, anything you can't rationalize or make sense of, is creates fear. You know, people are afraid of something they can't understand or see or do. So when women would journey or they would do rituals or whatever, and things would happen. Of course, that's, not something you can easily figure out. So it's frightening. And in Egypt, the females were gods, goddesses. The women, and that represents a big matriarchal thrust. When this went to Egypt, and there, it just went on for thousands of years there. But again, mystics and magic and all the things that didn't make sense to men, right?
Right.
Because if you see something you can't explain or you can't figure out, it's frightening. Even today,
Yes.
look at that
Well,
type of thing.
and we were talking about the in Christianity, how the divine feminine really has been painted in a way where there's a certain, I'm going to say, powerlessness. And so Mother Mary is, I would say, the main woman in Christianity, the mother of Jesus, but Jesus certainly is, right, who most are following and taking the cues from.
Mhm.
But a lot in the Bible and in historical text has been eliminated over the years based on some of this fear. And so essentially it is known, if you look into some of this, and you have to do your own research, and certainly we weren't there, right, but we can feel into it, and there's a lot more information than just what is in your standard Bible, for example, like the Gnostic texts, or even parts of the Bible, other parts of the Bible that were taken out, that painted Mary, the Virgin Mary, and then Mary Magdalene in much more empowered ways. And so they were basically priestesses of their time, and they had shamanic mystical practices. And so with Jesus walking on water and the miracles that he
Somebody taught him all
performed,
of that, and I think that was his mother.
yes, the women taught him. And they also, I mean, a virgin birth, I don't know, that's pretty.
Well, even when you look at the, how Jesus was, if some people believe that he was married to Mary Magdalene,
Yes,
they were a couple, and that to paint him as a normal man who had a wife and a um, connection and a balanced family life, they took that away, and he became a celibate son of God. So he wasn't normal, like he didn't have a family, he didn't have children, he didn't have a wife.
right.
They painted her as a whore. So they just changed the story, I think.
Right.
It's my belief that, they changed the story. And I think that there's more to the story. I think there's a lot more to the story. And that's kind of where it began, because when they changed um, the belief system, through organized religion, a lot of the women were painted in a different light, so that they wouldn't be revered, they wouldn't be special, they wouldn't be goddesses, they wouldn't be important. And,
Right, like Mother Mary never overwhelmingly appealed to me in Christianity, because
right.
it's like, okay, yes, the loving, compassionate aspect did, but
Mhm.
that's really all that she retained as far as like, the mysticism and the focus on the creation of divine feminine and the
Right.
power and all of that was erased. So it's
Mhm.
not like, oh, okay, this, that is the example. They're giving this washed out example for women, like this is what you can sort of strive for, maybe, or this is really what you want to be in your life. But meanwhile, I've also read history of, during her time, it's, yes, she taught Jesus, she raised him, and she also had her own, I guess you could say, ministry, the same as he did, where she was continuing to help people and empower people in all different ways and to teach throughout her life. And certainly not everyone was on board with that being okay. And so I read about, them trying to burn down her home in Babylon and different, or was it Babylon, Bethlehem? Um, in different areas as she traveled, the people who were really afraid of the power. And so,
Yeah.
yes, this started even before Jesus and even before all the Marys. who were, really shamanic and priestesses, and the mysticism was so intact. But that, yeah, it feels like a real turning point where things got dark in a certain way, which is interesting because obviously the focus of the story around Jesus, it's like there's a lot about, okay, he came to save us and the return of the light, etc. But this seems to have unfolded for thousands of years until now in terms of how women have been disempowered.
Yeah, at least for 2,500, 3,000 years, this has been out of balance, and it's it's been workable, and people have been existing and thriving and failing,
Yes.
both sides of it. But it's now at a point where nature and the planet and our future, the future of humanity, is critically impacted by the imbalance. And so it's important that we focus on this more, and that we start to do rituals and celebrations, and bring the shamanic vibration back into it, where women did that and practiced that in thousands of years ago, for thousands of years, 60,000 years maybe. um, if we don't do that, there are so many people, there are so many of us, and so many of our lives have been influenced by the industrialization of this planet. They've industrialized agriculture and our food, and everything has been controlled by large corporations, and it's about progress and technology and money. And we need to focus on bringing it back to nature and
Yes.
success in surviving, and in a healthy way, not just surviving, but not just existing, but thriving. And the planet itself is in crisis. And talked about this. It comes back to this in my heart every time we do these podcasts.
Right.
We need to listen to this earth, and we need to hear what she's saying. And
Right. Mother Earth. It's
mother,
Mother Earth. The divine feminine is there. Look at all she has created.
well,
Talk.
and even when we're born into it and created, we go back to the earth.
Yes.
When we leave these bodies, they go back to the mother, they go back to the
Yes.
earth. We become part of her. It doesn't matter whether you're cremated or whether you're dissolved in a tank or whatever you do. If you're buried in the ground, and you go back to the earth. So she is the true creator and the true mother. And if we don't listen to those heart-centered matriarchal urges that we have, and I mentioned it earlier, we need to have uh, women who are balanced in the feminine divine with enlightened men.
Yes.
They have to work together. They have to help men that will help them work through this, and bring it back to balance. And listening, like your intuitive piece about listening to nature, and watching how it's done. If you just go out into nature, you see how it's done. It's
Right.
already
Nature has
perfected.
all the answers.
Yeah, it's already perfected, and
Hmm.
we don't need to look for a technological answer. We can just simplify everything, bring it back to nature, bring it back to the shamanism, bring it back to the simple. And people are starting to realize that if you just talk to your cells and you talk to your body will respond to you. You don't have to have medicine. You don't have to have, um, devices or anything. Your own electromagnetic force, your own vibration will heal your body.
Yes. That
So
is so important.
it's so important to balance out what we put in our bodies, and not over prepare the food. Just keep things simple. Don't add too many things to them. Don't get processed foods that have shelf life. Put it in your body when it's still alive. Those
Right.
type of things. And so I think that, when you simplify things, and you look
This,
at how they've been for so many years, like I said, in the Kalahari, um, 30,000 years ago, you eat when you're hungry, you sleep when you're tired, You drink when you're thirsty. You wake up when you're rested. It's a cycle. You honor the solstice, you watch the crops, what grows in the winter, what grows in the summer, what you you eat the things that come from the earth and that come off of trees that grow from the earth. It's all back to the creator. The female is the tree of life. That's really the creator. That's really where everything comes from. And even the stories about that in Adam and Eve and the tree of knowledge, it's like not about the apple, it's
Right.
about knowledge. And she was sharing knowledge with Adam, right? And that was supposedly okay. They thought that was okay. That whole story was, um, misconstrued. You know,
Right.
it's just a story. So when you look at it, it's like with two people, if you have a team, you have a person who maybe one person is good at something and the other one is good at something else, that forms a success. That forms a formula, for success because you use the strengths of that one person and the other one uses their strengths and you work together. So when we work together with nature and we honor the seasons and we honor the solstice and we watch the way the food's grown and the water and we protect this planet and we protect the animals, it will keep producing for us. And there's enough resources to take care of the people on this planet. And
Yeah,
there's enough space.
I
And the
think
women, the matriarchal societies look at the whole. They look at how to nurture the community, how to nurture the earth, how to nurture
exactly.
the children, how to and the educational system. We can teach our children more at home about how to make a fire and how to prepare food and how to grow things. And they don't need half the things they learn in these educational systems. I'm very against that. I
Right.
don't think that they need to be taught the things that they're taught and put in that social environment where they have to strive to be competitive, and be better at things and feel inferior. If they go toward music at home, you have a piano, you let them play music, you know, raise your own children, teach them. I don't think that it has to be structured. I think that that is a big waste of time.
I think that what's coming through the strongest right now, also, as far as for the modern day shaman, what is most relevant right now, this concept of simplifying, it
Right.
has come in other episodes that we've done. And this feels so important. Like you were saying earlier, if we go back into distant times, the women were doing ceremonies, connecting with the earth. And, people really didn't have anything. I mean, hopefully they had what they needed,
Possession.
right?
No possessions.
Yeah, no
Just the earth, the
possessions.
things that come from it, and the things that were on it, and that's all they needed.
Yes. So that's so important because they didn't have any possessions, but they had everything that they needed. And that is pretty far from how we live in modern society today. But there's also, I'm going to say, without getting into it, an agenda to keep us confused and to create a lot of static and a lot of different points of focus for our minds so that we
Mhm.
anyway, it's about coming back to intuition, creating space. So in that last episode, we were talking about having a sacred circle where, when you're in your circle, you can create a ceremony, but it's also a place where you can listen to God and talk to God and, connect with your intuition. And with so much noise in such a sort of busy modern day lifestyle, this inhibits us from connecting to our own intuition, which, Betty, you were also saying earlier, again, look to nature for all of the answers in terms of working as a team, men and women, really everyone, but just in these examples, you can look out in nature and you can see how the different animals work together. And I think what's really important is like we intuitively have the same knowing and capacity, but there's all this static and programming that gets in the way that makes it challenging for us to be aware of how to be in the flow in the same way that we see it in nature, where that balance comes in naturally and seamlessly. We have these blocks that we run up against, and even the example of sleeping when you're tired and eating when you're hungry, and we have these schedules, and there's whatever with work, and there's whatever with the traffic and the commitments and all the things. So our society is not set up to live in a way that honors these things. So, there's some discipline to that, but there's also some deprogramming that is required for us.
Well, it's just like time, time is a human construct. In the desert, they didn't have clocks. They didn't
Right.
have telephones that remind them to do something. They acted on things as they needed to be addressed. If you're cold, you build a fire. You know,
Right. Very present, very
it's
in the
so
moment.
simple, and things are so. We are not what we do, and we are not what we have. We
That's
are,
really
we
important.
are. We just have to be
Yes.
being, not human doing. You're a human being. Now, there's something to that. When you just have to be who you are. You don't have to have, in this society, it's how much you have that makes you better than someone else, how much you acquire. Well, you don't take that into the grave. They don't
Right.
have a U-Haul truck coming up and putting everything you own in the grave with you. It goes somewhere into a landfill, or it goes to the Goodwill or whatever. You, what you do, your job during, or your career or whatever, that is not who you are. That is what you
Right.
do, right?
Yes.
So to be is just to go inside and to connect your heart to everything you do. You connect your heart to what, if you're working as a nurse, then you put your heart center, thinking with your heart into your job, what you do. But then you aren't a nurse, you're a woman who does nursing, right?
Right.
People equate their worth or their importance or their value, their worthiness with how much they have. You look at people on the street and you think, well, they don't have any food, they don't have shoes, they're sleeping on the street, they still are human beings. They What they have doesn't make them who they are.
And part of what's important to acknowledge is we are programmed, we learn this from a young age, that these things are important, and we learn this blurred version of,
Acquiring, yeah. Mhm.
right, like acquire the things, and what does success look like, and you do start to feel like I am my job, and I am how much money I have, and whatever this,
Right.
whatever that might look like. But even if you don't ascribe to those values, or even if you get away from that, you're still a player in this modern day society. So you likely are still going to your job and doing these things and negotiating with all of this programming. And um how are you putting it before? It's like, we're it's like being trapped is how it's coming to me in this moment.
Well, and it's
But
compliance. I talk
compliance.
about, yeah, it's like forced compliance.
Yes.
But when you see these fires here in California, when you see the neighbors, the guy who only makes $500 a week, he's got the hose out, squirting water on the guy who's a millionaire, right? Or the millionaire who's losing his home is using his hose to squirt on the guy next door who maybe doesn't have $1 million home. Just a neighbor that he knows and cares about, right? It's
Right.
like what you, at a time when everything is being stripped away and taken from you, and you put those two people together, they're both just human beings. What
Yes.
they have is gone. It just disappeared right before their eyes, but they still are who they are. And that is in their heart. That is their spirit. And you see that rise up in some more than others, and what they're made of. And like, you find out what you're made of, you find out what you have as strength, your inner strength. And I think that women characteristically pick up the pieces. That's been our role. Like, we have flour, and we have some salt, and we have water, and we're going to make bread. You make something out of what you have. So when you have a fire like that and you go back up there, you salvage everything and you help each other and everybody puts together their energy and you make something come back from nothing. But
Yes.
it takes working together and being unified and balanced and not judging. There shouldn't be judging. And when we don't have balance in the female and the male energy, the divine feminine and the divine masculine, that is where the judgment comes in. You start judging others, you start judging the other gender. If you're balanced, men don't have a problem taking care of the children and schooling them at home and taking them to soccer and doing, and the women are working. There's families right now that's a very successful um, thing. But when I
Well,
was young, nobody did that.
I think that it requires this, like you're saying, this balance of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And what does that look like? Being clear on who you are, again, as a human being, not these things you do. And really being secure in that, because then it's like it doesn't have to look a certain way and you don't have to do a certain thing. And you just find the balance based on how your life is or based on the details,
Mhm.
and that feels like that flow that we were talking about that you can see in nature. You open the door and all of the animals are doing their thing and they are in the balance, and
Yeah, they just naturally know what they need to do. And it doesn't matter whether you're the male or the female, you both accomplish the same goal. And that's a perfect balance, like how geese, if, they mate for life, swans, they mate for life. They have one partner and they work together to create and they have little babies and they take care of them and they take care of each other. And there's just no question. They don't have anything to compare it to. They're not watching the news. They're not seeing that they're not doing something right. They instinctively know what needs to be done. And I
So
don't even really want to use the word instinct because intuitively they know. They come from a place of knowing. It is not something they learn and watch others. They
And
learn
it's
other.
also about being present, which is not something that they need to try to do, right? Except for us as humans, we can create these prisons for ourselves where we're in our mind, we're in the past or we're in the future, even though it's not real in the present moment. It's really just
Right.
whatever the next step is, whatever's in front of us. And this is what they're doing. What's the next step? I got to go get some acorns,
Yeah,
It's not anything beyond that. And
right.
there even can be something scary, I think, to people around moving in that way, living in that way, or the idea or concept of that, because we spend so much time in the mind, in the past and the future. Like, wow, if I only thought of the next step, like, how would that work? And the truth is, it's when you're in that space, it's incredibly freeing, and you're trusting your intuition and you're trusting creator and you're trusting mother earth, like all of these aspects you're tuning in, and you can be in this flow of trust, which I think is on the opposite of the spectrum of fear. In some ways it's one of those things that's
Faith,
moving in the
yeah.
other direction. And
Faith
so
in yourself and faith in your inner knowledge because you have all of this, from lifetimes that we've lived here. We've been here thousands of times in different capacities. We've been a billionaire, we've been a pauper, we've been here through with illnesses and injuries and different deaths, and we've lived through all these lifetimes. So we come in with all that knowledge, but we don't have it readily available, like our amnesia takes over when you're born here again, and you have to go inside and look and align yourself with the earth and with the cosmos. Every time you incarnate, it's a privilege to incarnate here and to have a life here, to learn. That's how we learn as souls. We learn by incarnating here and going through these experiences that we go through. So when you go inside and you say, what is this? Why am I not doing something successful? Or why is this not happening? It's because we're out of alignment with the cosmos. We're out of alignment with Mother Earth. Excuse me. We're flooding our bodies. We talked about it earlier with the chemicals from the stress and from worrying about the future and worrying about the past and thinking what we didn't do, and we're not going to get this because we're not worthy, and we have to do more, we have to be more, we have to feel different, we have to change how we look, we have to do something. We don't have to do any of that.
So
We
this
just
is
have to
very,
balance
yes, this is
divine
very
feminine and masculine.
significant.
And the
Right.
chemicals in our body are going to just either make us better or destroy us. If you have too much stress, your adrenal glands will burn out. I've seen people with that condition where it's just impossible to tell them to slow down and to try to think about the moment they're in, not worry about next week or next month or next year. We don't even know if we'll be here. We
This
take it
piece,
for granted.
yes. And this feels huge because as far as empowerment through the divine feminine,
Hmm.
and it's sort of like, okay, what is it? And then we're covering like, what does this look like now in modern day times? How can we be empowered around this? One of the key things is simplifying as much as possible in our lives. That
Hmm.
part we could talk about more, but starting wherever you can start. Sometimes it's decluttering your home, it can be any number of things, but making your life more simple. But
And
the
not
other
blaming
piece,
others, not blaming the
yes,
politicians, not blaming your husband, not blaming your wife, not
yes,
blaming children. You say, this is all part of your life experience, and you have to go inside. And that's the shamanic piece. You go inside to get in
yes.
alignment. And once you're in alignment, it all starts to work out. It all starts to balance. It all starts to happen. Once you see what you need to do, adjust yourself.
Right.
And
We're in control of ourselves and nothing else. So that's an important, yes, everything is connected, but it's an important vantage point or thing to remember, perhaps, because a lot of times when we're in situations that cause stress, the stress is around something that we can't control or something that's made up in our mind. And part of why I think this piece around stress was coming up so strongly is because yeah, we're living in a modern day society where there are so many things that cause stress for us. This piece is connected to programming and needing to rewire our brains a little bit and to start noticing all those little tiny things where the stress response in the body comes up. The most common example that comes up is, when you're in traffic and somebody slams on the brakes in front of you, or, something with driving, I think. But, there's so many different examples. And you can feel that stress response. And Betty, you mentioned, and if you can share it, that would be great, something that you always say to bring yourself back to the present moment. And it's a mantra. And this is one technique, right? But there is a science to this. And while I am not an expert on it, I understand the basics. And essentially, when we're relaxed and calm and we can be a more full expression of who we are, we have this, I'm going to say, focus in the brain in the prefrontal cortex. But when we have those stress responses to all these different things, that can kick us into our more ancient, or sometimes it's called reptilian brain. I believe it's in the amygdala. And so this is like a shift where now we are not so aware of our response. It's like the stress happens and then you just kind of reflexively do whatever you're going to do in the moment, and then maybe you regret it afterwards.
Mhm.
But something that can be important is to start to be aware of when you feel that and bring in a mantra or take some deep breaths. And I think the combination of those two is one simple thing that's valuable. And then you can, yeah,
The
you can
secret is when you say I am in the
yes,
mantra. When I say I am I am whole, I am healthy, I am happy, I am free.
yes,
I am is the secret.
bringing it back to you
Whatever
and what you can
you
control.
say you are, and you create, because we are creating this as we go along.
Yes,
If you don't say, I want to be okay and I want to be happy, and say, you say, I am. And then you can add whatever you want to that. And I am healthy, I am happy, I am whole, whatever you say, you're stating that you already are that. So you're creating that. And then
Yes,
you're
and it's taking
held and
your power
everything goes
back.
with it. You know, it's like when you say, um, I have everything I need. You know, things are always working out for me. They're already happening. You're making the change as you state it. It's not, I wish that I had this, or I hope I could do that, or, you know, you state I am firmly, and then your body follows that. It hears what you say. The words are
Right.
powerful. So I believe in mantras and I write them down and I advise people when I do readings, you know, if you just write these things down. And another thing that you triggered when you said something just about, I see people watching TV with the remote and they're in their recliner and they're watching and they're complaining about everything that's happening on TV and they're changing channels and listening to them. And I say, if you want things to be different, get out in the street and get together with the protesters and get together with the movements and join organizations and start things moving and happening instead of being a armchair critic, right?
Absolutely.
You're not doing anything for yourself or others when you're just critiquing what others are not doing on TV. If you watch the news and you listen to that, you're not going to be happy.
Well, this is about being empowered and taking your
Yeah,
power back, the examples you're
something.
giving. When you
Yeah.
say I am, not only can you create that state and that shift in the moment, but
Mm.
it brings it back to the I versus whatever just happened that maybe stressed you out, like someone slams on their brakes, right? And then you get that, oh my gosh, and whatever's going to be the fallout afterwards. But it's about them usually, right? Like, oh my God, they're such a horrible driver, or oh my God, I can't, this outward thing. And it's like, okay, yeah, it's beyond your control. It already happened. So the I am is like, okay, what state do I choose to be in this moment? Who am I? What am I creating? And then with the armchair critic on the sofa, it's similar, right? It's
Yeah.
yeah, we might have criticisms and judgments, but
What can you do to
what can
change
you
it?
do?
And
Yeah.
how can you be not one of the people who's just complaining about how it's being done? You know, just do something and make it better or do something else that has some kind of an impact. But the other, you know, it's a
And it's
lot of
what
people.
choice am I making? Like I think there is a place of it's important for us to take responsibility. If you are upset about something and say, yes, you're sitting on your sofa and, sure, have an opinion, but you're either choosing to have an opinion and then that's it. And it's not to say that we can do something about everything all the time, right? But you also can make a choice, like you said, to go out and do something different. And
Get educated, just learn about it and find
right,
out about it. But
you're going to
it,
feel better as the first step initially, which that in itself is worth it. But this can, have a ripple effect that's really pretty powerful.
well, I talked earlier about, I think this should be a global sisterhood project. There's projects, there's, you know, the um, things that they have that where they put a global, I can't remember, it's a GP, um, you know, where they measure the energy in a place and they have these sensors. They have them all over the world. They have them, and before 9/11, the area around New York just lit up like the global something project. I can't remember what the
Yes,
actual
like
name.
the magnetic frequency of a different area.
Yeah. And what I was saying
Yeah.
about the Kalahari, it just keeps coming up in my mind. The earth feels every move that we make. So if we're dancing at the beach in the sand, the earth knows that. If we're in the desert and we're stomping and we're drumming and we're singing, and the earth knows that. She feels everything that we do on the surface. So if we can make dance or ritual or ceremony, or if we sing or whatever we're doing, we're raising the vibration and we're doing something positive. And that's where I feel we need to go back to um, being careful about what kind of noise we make, but make some noise, you know, be heard,
Well, and
dance,
also
sing.
connecting to these geomagnetic fields in the earth. I mean, there's a theory that there's crystals in the center of the earth, and I don't
Yeah,
know that
every
they've
vibration
been
goes somewhere. So
right.
if we make it about the healing dance and the healing drumming and the healing singing and the healing vibrations going into the planet and out to the cosmos. Everything that we do in that way is going to balance and bring this feminine divine into the forefront.
Well, and it feels to me also like when we are connected to the earth, when we do this, there is a strong amplification.
Mhm.
So, yes, I'm not sure they've proved a crystal core necessarily. I mean, obviously, we know there are crystals embedded in different layers of the earth, but
Mhm.
these magnetic fields, it's like when we connect with her, when we tune in, when our ceremony is connected to these frequencies, yeah, the dancing, it's like there's an amplification of the energy, and I feel that that happens um, on the negative energy side as well.
Yeah,
So, you know, whatever we can do to amplify these heart-centered energies helps to balance what's going on the planet. um,
right.
so there might be certain things where it feels like, okay, well, I can't in this moment do anything about the fact that that corporation dumps this much plastic into the ocean, you know, at this rate or whatever the case may be. But you can go out and you can do a ceremony from a heart-centered place with an intention that that is something that is going to be balanced or resolved. And there's this amplification when you get into a deeper space of your intention that is also something that we know about in quantum science is really powerful.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always have to be so literal or linear in terms of what we choose to do, but there always is something we can do because we always have our intention and we can pretty much always go into ceremony in some way as well.
Well, when I talked about the Global Sisterhood Project, it's like um, people talk about doing groups and they talk about doing women's circles. And, um, in history, as far back as I've ever studied or looked at, like the Sumerian tablets and, all the things that are so in antiquity, like what things that were written down, everything is about circles.
Yes.
Everything, Stonehenge and all of the way that you place crystals on a grid, everything is about sacred circles, you know. So if we are forming groups of women, and like when I say the prayer, may we sit, when we meet again, sit in circle, right? The round table, the knights of the round table, whenever you have a group of people, the natives smoke the peace pipe in a circle. Everybody makes circles. It's all about, sacred geometry anyway. But when you have a circle, add people to that. Start inviting other people to come, whether they believe in it or not.
Right.
Whatever you put out is going to come back. So if you touch one heart and you get one person to join the group, start groups, start the sisterhood, start this project. And the Western woman, the Dalai Lama has said it twice, that the Western woman is going to save the world. The,
Yeah.
the Western civilization has been smashed by patriarchal societies and belief systems that are antiquated. They don't work. So if we start these projects and we start having these groups of women that get together, it doesn't matter how small or how large the group is, everybody has something to say. Everybody has a wealth of knowledge from lifetime after lifetime that they've been on this planet. And we're not going to be able to stay on her and be here if we don't change this. It won't be survivable. It's going to be devastation. And I've talked about this. It comes up every time. Spirit tells me if we don't pay attention and start making something happen in a good way, this is going to just dissolve. We won't have the life that we have now. So if we can put groups of people together and ask them to form groups, small groups in their home, in their backyard, or at the beach, or in a retreat, or wherever they can get together, it doesn't have to even have a script or an agenda. You don't have to even plan it. You just get together and everybody just starts talking. And
Right.
the natives did the talking stick. They hand the stick to, and that woman talks, and then she passes it around, and Everybody has something to offer. And when you put all of those energies together and experiences together, that makes something happen.
Yes.
So I think that, like I said, just sitting and doing the remote and talking about it, if you have a problem with the something that's going on, get out and do something about it. If you don't want
Yes.
plastic in the ocean, take a trash bag down to the beach and pick it up.
Exactly, because I think it can be easy to feel overwhelmed or maybe feel like it's not going to matter or something like that. And honestly, we know that there are many circles and many groups happening right now, and they've been happening throughout time, and a lot of people putting their energy in the right direction. But it also feels critical that even more of us, get into circles and into communities and find the actions to take that are in alignment for ourselves.
Well, and we don't have to. We're not victims.
Yes.
Have power. We need to recognize and remember the power that we do have, and that's what we were talking about when they started to put a lid on this boiling pot. These women were starting to confuse them and overwhelm them, and they're like, oh, we got to shut them up and put a lid on that pot and stop that from boiling over because they're going to do something crazy. It's like, yeah, we're going to do something crazy. We're going to change the world. If we get this in balance and the feminine divine comes back the way it's supposed to, it is going to be, historically, it'll be one of the most amazing things. And this is an amazing time to be alive. This is
Yeah.
amazing time to be on this planet.
I would say I really feel the not just the hope, but also the positive momentum and energy
And the
around.
worthiness, the
Yes.
worthiness, we are worthy of this. We
Yes.
should not ever feel that we were less in any way. And that should never have happened, but it did. We were killed, we were ousted, we were, treated,
Witches for
witches were burned. I mean,
hundreds of
we were
years.
treated inferiorly um, for years. And like I said, the people that did make differences or whatever, some of them were recognized and some were not.
Right.
But the ones that get together right now, we don't have to have our name on a plaque. We don't have to be in the news. We don't have to be in a book somewhere. We're going to make it better for posterity, for our children, for the future generations. We're going to make it better for the cosmos. We're going to make it better for the planet, and that she can continue to provide for, and the beauty that we have on this planet to stay beautiful and to go back to the simple way of doing things and not destroying things. When we destroy things, what comes from that? What do we learn from that? It's when we create and we nurture and we bring justice to those things. We're worthy of that. We're just as worthy as men, you know.
Well, and what's coming up as you share that too is there's certain things where people, I think, feel more powerless. Like, what are we going to do about the educational system or the healthcare system or some of these structures that we have right in our country? And you had been speaking earlier about education, and even I don't know if you said it this way exactly, but homeschooling essentially, or teaching your children what feels valuable in comparison to like what may be taught that is kind of irrelevant. But outside of that, even I'm thinking of healthcare where I do my shamanic work and intuitive work. There are various forms of holistic healthcare. And so, not everything is connected to insurance. And I'm just saying this briefly as an example, but there's a lot around that where people could feel like, I have to pay a certain amount of money for insurance, or, what the coverage is, or it looks, there's a lot that can make you feel powerless based on the way the system currently is. But there's also a lot of people right now who are changing that, who are changing the ways that healthcare is done, or, and some of this, granted, is outside of the insurance model. So it may look like, okay, well, you're not paying for these things or you're paying out of pocket versus insurance. And again, not to make this too much of a tangent, but as you do that and you prioritize your health and you make these changes, it creates new models outside of the existing model that is the one that is not working and that is frustrating and that's
Well,
creating
the
problems.
pandemic showed that. The pandemic
Yes.
was one of the critical pieces in this whole thing. They, everybody changed globally. Everybody changed how they did everything. And
So much has
you're,
shifted since
again,
then.
forced compliance, right? You
Right.
either have to do it this way or you don't get to do it. You're not going to get to go. And in the Philippines, if you were out after curfew, you were shot. That's pretty serious. You
Right.
can't leave your house or you're going to be shot because there's something happening that's bigger than you, right? This is just a glimpse of what could happen. This is just a glimpse of what could happen. If you have a pandemic and there's something that powerful that's making everyone comply and do things a certain way, we changed how we educated our children. We changed how we did everything. That can be done. You could see the Himalayas. Here in California, you could see the mountains with the snow on them.
Yes.
There's too much smog and you can't even see it. So many things changed, and some of them stayed in effect. They still are doing remote work from home. People are getting to know their children. They are home all day instead of out somewhere else. It showed that just something that impactful would change the world. And it did.
And yeah, as
Didn't
you're
go back
saying,
to
there were
work.
so many positive changes as
They
far
were very
as the
positive.
environment being cleaned up, but also people sort of had a forced pause in different ways to look at how have I been living my life? What might I want to
I could
change?
change that. I can change this. I can
Yeah.
do this. And look what I did, how I did that. And then those innovations and that creativity was in, people started getting inspired and fired up about how they could make it better. And they did that. So that, why did that take that pandemic to do that?
I do
Because
think
people don't pay attention.
yes, but there also is the part of the brain being wired to do to the path of least resistance at all times. So while
Programming.
I don't want to push that too much, I do want to like give grace to the fact that when we go back to the stressful situation in traffic and then saying that mantra, my recommendation from this podcast or sort of takeaways from this conversation is always, and this is for my clients also, 1 to 3 things at most. Pick a couple of things that you can focus on and make those small changes. And just as we were talking about being present in the moment, don't worry about all the other changes maybe you can make, or
Or the
what's
other
going to happen
people.
down the line. Just say the mantra at the times you feel stressed. As an example, you might choose something else that works for you, but just start with that small thing. And if you do that for 2 weeks, that is going to change some of the pathways in your brain. So you have just created space and opened up opportunity to be less stressed, to be in a calmer state, to have a different perspective in your life, and to make different choices. And that part is really critical in this time, again, in terms of reclaiming your power, because it does go back to there's a lot of forces against us. And I think sometimes, like, we do always have a choice and there is something we can do, but sometimes people can get hard on themselves or go down a path of depression or anxiety or whatever the thing is, where it spirals like, I'm stuck. And so just something small that's consistent, that feels like, okay, this is manageable, I can do this, creates
Right.
the window to open up more opportunity. And for all of us, it's just start with that, because there is so much we could want to change or do different or simplify, or and just a couple of shifts that start to make the brain work differently, we also will have more space to tap into our intuition. And that is the balance of the masculine and the feminine, in the sense that now the brain is functioning a little bit differently, that left brain and the programming that we have, etc. And then we also are more connected to the right brain and the intuitive space. Not that it is so
Creative
black
part.
and
Yeah.
white as right and left brain, but yeah, creator and creative energy, and that creativity of the divine feminine. So I think it can feel very empowering to know that there can just be a couple of small things like that, and that's it for
And
now.
then sharing them, if you get together in a group and you
Yes.
share your
Yes.
ideas, and someone may not have thought of that, but then when they hear it, they're like, well, why didn't I think of that? And then I can do that, and I'm going to do that. And, when you share, it's just like, um, back in the 50s, women got together and had coffee in the morning, and they talked about their kids and they talked about their husbands, and they didn't work. They were housewives or whatever, but they took like a half an hour or an hour, and they all just jabbered about everything. And say one person knows how to get stains out of something, and as simple as that, like you help, you share, you give information, you help each other out, and the collective, the minds together, and the community, and the sharing, you know
It is
that's
so supportive and it creates
supporting
more
each other. Yeah.
power.
Yeah. And it's
Right.
it's seeing that there's more than one way to do things, that you can still accomplish. And I always say, I don't care how we do it, and I don't care who does it, as long as we get it done.
Right.
When I was a supervisor, I would say, you can do that job and you can do this job. And so you work here and you work there. And I don't care who gets the credit for it. And I don't care how it gets done, get it done. And that worked, because the strengths are, one person has certain strengths and another. So when you get a bunch of people together and you start dancing and you start singing and you start feeling and you start connecting vibrationally, that's where the shaman, or the original healer, the original power is: movement and expression, and not too much thinking, not too much any brain, right, left, whatever. Feeling with the heart. Thinking with the heart is feeling. And when you dance and you are uninhibited, and like you just do an expressive dance, or you just move your arms and you're breathing, and it feels so good. And I feel like that goes out, it just ripples and goes out into the cosmos. And I
That
feel
is
like that's
really
what, yeah.
the
And
divine feminine also. Yes, to
yeah,
feel and think from the heart space.
yeah. And I think that if we do that, with other women, and there's probably a lot of women that don't think about that. They don't dance, they don't, sing, they don't think they can, or whatever. And when you're in a space where you aren't judged and you can just feel the music and you can connect, you can just do that, and it's very liberating. It's very opening, for the soul. And I just think that it's important to start more of these types of retreats and groups, especially the Western woman. You know, in other cultures, they do things like that. Like in Africa, the women dance and sing and scream and do. It's so exciting. You know,
Yes. And
when
it's
they
built in, right? It's built into the
built
culture
in, yeah,
as a
and
way of life.
the colors that they wear and the clothing, and it's so expressive, and it's uninhibited. And I just feel like if we have more of these small groups, they turn into larger groups, and everybody has something to add. So I feel it should be a global, um, effect from just a community level. We can start small if we start groups, and I mean, you don't even have to have a place. You can go to the beach. You don't even have to have a space or pay money or anything. It's just free places, parks, wherever you just get in a group and talk and bring something up. Or you can have like the little jar that you sent me with the joy jar, where you have ideas, and things. That I love that. That was so fun. And you can just put a bunch of everybody write something down and put it in a basket, and then pull it out and talk about it.
I
Have a
love that.
subject that, maybe somebody will hear one thing that'll help them. It's just good, creating more good and more good, and it just goes on and on like that. And I feel like we've lost that to some degree over the years. Like,
It feels like a drum beat to me, or like you don't want to always just be beating your own drum, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So then now you have a circle of people where you're all drumming, and there's this dynamic aspect that's added in. And so I think that, yeah, I'd love to hear from anybody tuning in if there is a circle that you're a part of, or something you end up starting, or even how it goes, if you decide to try out the
or
mantra.
even if they have a space that they want to offer to do it in, like if they have a ranch or a farm or a piece of property where you can do that and have a bonfire, or get people together in talking circles and talk about this divine feminine, and let go of the competition between men and women, and have this, like I said, balanced women with enlightened men coming together and balancing the divine masculine and the divine feminine for the good of all, for the collective. And hoping that you can talk to your guys, if you have husbands or boyfriends or sons or fathers or whoever you can talk to, if they want to join in, it doesn't have to be all women.
Right.
There are men that want to join in, that's fine. We're not going to have an exclusive club. I mean, it could be, you know, they can be involved, but and some men would do that. Some feel not threatened by doing that, and they would probably welcome that type of thing.
It's important in creating the balance also. We're not trying to trade one situation for another. We're
Right.
really emphasizing the balance of the masculine and the feminine, and men and women working together and bringing
Right.
their strengths together. Like you were saying, everyone is bringing different strengths to the table. So not seeing some as better than others, but really recognizing that that unity, that connectedness is what amplifies what is possible, what you can do together.
Yeah.
So if you have any closing comments. Otherwise, when you're ready, we'll go into that closing prayer. And I just want to thank everyone for tuning in with us. And again, we look forward to hearing from you. We look forward to connecting further. So grateful.
Yes, and I am grateful for the podcast. I'm grateful for you.
I'm
Uh,
grateful for you as well. Yeah.
but I would urge everybody to comment or to give us ideas and to make this a project, instead of just sitting back and thinking about what we cannot change, to look inside and see what we can change, and start with yourself. And then hopefully that will, if each person does improvement, self improvement, and self awareness, and see how balanced you are. If you have the masculine divine, because a lot of women are too much in the feminine divine and they need to have the masculine. So look at that aspect of it and how you can balance. And, we're not going to blame anyone here. This is more about creating a connection with the earth and the cosmos, and the inhabitants of this planet need to get back to basics and like simplify again. I'm going to urge that every time. The simpler, the better, but don't make a big um, issue about it, or you'll find the people that are ready to hear it and you'll talk to them. And some people will be ready to give you lessons, and those people will come into your life and listen to everything everyone has to say, and just be supportive right now of everybody, because of each other, because right now the planet needs our help. And it's going through, all of us are going through what the planet is going through, and we're going to be stronger, we're going to be better, we're going to be more equipped to handle the things that come in the next few years, but it is going to be um, a bumpy ride. So I wish you all blessings and knowledge, awareness. I hope that everybody has a good rest of the month.
Joy, dancing.
I'm sorry.
Joy and dancing with your drum and community.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, like I said, the smallest things can make the hugest difference, and it feels good,
Yes.
you know. And usually if something feels good, it is. if you feel the vibration in you is amplified, or you're lit up, if you're feeling alive. And sometimes the most adverse events and the most struggles that we go through gives us the most awareness of our being alive. Just welcome every experience right now, I would say. So may we meet again, sit in circle, tending our hearts, cultivating our shared love and joy, supporting the ascension of our beautiful planet. Until then, our light to yours.
Aho.
Aho.